Welcome back. Day 3 of putting that into the D40 Navara. So we took out the VK45DD and we're putting in a VK45DE. So if you haven't watched the other two videos, hop on over and watch those. There'll be a card somewhere. I don't know. I'll do that later on. Alright, so have a look at this this clutch that I was talking about that I said to you had some issues that we need to deal with. Right, so here's the clutch and flywheel assembly that's been in the vehicle since day 1. Not the supercharger from the Gloria. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? So 5 years and, I don't know, 50 or 60,000 Ks or something like that. When we were tuning it right back at the start, we could only get to about 6 grand and it would, they were having problems. It was cutting out and all that, so carry on, misfiring, whatever. Might be related to this trigger wheel that I've mounted onto the flywheel there. There's not really a whole heap of room in diameter between the tone wheel and the flywheel. It's possible that by the time you put the pressure plate on there, did I get this the right way? Because these only fit in one spot. I got it in the right spot. First go. That was awesome. There's not a heap of distance from here to here, so it's possible that the sensor might be picking up on this and this and this as it goes around, and that might be what was causing slight misfire. Well, it was basically a dead cut at 6 grand. It was just going, I'm not going any higher than that. So, I mean, I could re-engineer all this, put the sensor wheel somewhere else, etc. But I'm quite happy revving to 6 grand. That's heaps anyway. Heaps enough for this deal. So what has happened is I've pretty much worn the friction disc. It's not completely stuffed. It would actually go for a lot longer. But I've worn that. We do have some wear issues on these springs in here as well, because of the, already mentioned it, the slight misalignment the engine has in relation to the chassis. So you do get a little bit of driveline vibration, tiny little bit, and that sort of thing gives this sort of thing absolute death during its lifetime. There's also a thing where, we can look at it on here. Say if that's horizontal, the crankshaft sensor is about here on the gearbox bell housing. But Nissan a bit of a nuisance. So I can show you on the gearbox. Actually, let's wander over there. They tend to use blueprints and just use the same dimensions on a lot of things. So if you see on here, crankshaft position sensor, and this is actually the D40 Navara thing. This is the VK45 SEMA bell housing spliced onto the D40 Navara bell housing. So they've put the clutch fork in the same place, which left me with only from here to here to do a slave cylinder. I know, concentric slave. Thinking about that. Probably might actually go and pick one up today. I was going to get an HGT one from Richard, because they'll be a really good unit and not a bad price, but I suddenly dove into this without thinking too far ahead, and we need like a week to get one from wherever Richard gets them from. Gearbox still sounds alright, so I might look into that, or then your release bearing too. Let's take that release bearing off and get a new one of those while we're at it today. Or I can just deal with this at a later date. I can put the gearbox back in, get it all back together and going, and then put a concentric slave in there later on. And in which case I could actually just put the same clutch back in it right now and just get on with assembling it. But we'll see. It's one of those things where if you put something off, it never happens, and that's what's happened here. I've been driving around with a hesitation when it's been warming up for 5 years. That sounds awesome, doesn't it? So we need to get on with it and get it done, get it sorted. So we should probably look into that clutch system at the same time. Alright, I'm going to go for a drive and see what happens. Alrighty, so flywheel's clean enough, that'll do. Doesn't have to be, that's too bright, isn't it? There you go. Go a little bit of a scuff, doesn't have to be perfect. It'll be fine. I've still got to put flywheel bolts in there, obviously, and I have to pull that bush out for the auto trans and put the manual spigot bush in the hole there. So I'll get on with that. There's it's not an adapter plate, it's a shim, basically, to do with getting spacing correct from my flywheel to gearbox, etc. I'll explain. Over here, gearbox, when I cut through here originally, that's too bright, I don't need a torch anymore, do I? When I cut through there and spliced this onto here, I didn't do it properly. Basically, there was an error of about 2 or 3 millimeters, maybe a little bit more. One side was slightly higher than the other side. It was a little bit out of alignment. That plus the misalignment of the engine and the chassis causes a vibration in the drive shaft, which hammers these springs. I'm going to put a CV joint on that front shaft eventually. I just haven't got around to it just now. So when that first clutch disc failed, one of these springs broke out, went inside this area here, jammed up the clutch, so the clutch didn't work. When that failed, I looked into the why and found that error that I'd made. So if you look at this here, you can see that's flush through there, right? There's no machining or no casting marks over this other side. There's a bit of a casting mark there. That was the error that I'd made. So I'd machined all that, took the gearbox apart, mounted onto that face there, onto the milling machine, machined all the front face of that to make sure it was square, true, correct. So got that right, and then while I was busy doing that, then we figured out what spacing we needed to get the crank angle sensor in the right position compared to the flywheel and all that sort of carry on. So that's why there's a shim on the engine. And so this is a brand new Exceedy friction plate to replace the other one. They've changed the design ever so slightly, and this spline comes further along the shaft. So I've measured up the engine, so I know what the dimensions are, run a straight edge across here, put the friction plate on that spline in relation to where it will be when it's all bolted up, and ensure that we do have correct contact between our splines, and it looks fine. Right, it's heaps. I'm going to make sure it's not going to, well, that's easy. I can make sure it's not going to bottom out at the other side, just push it on a little bit further. No problem at all there, right? So we've got sitting, it's actually almost bang on in the middle. So their change in design has actually worked out better for this. The other disc is potentially quite close to touching the snout. So that's that. I did not get a concentric slave cylinder. I just we just got a new bearing. We'll just put this back together as it is for now. Deal with it later on. Right, I'll carry on. Just like that. Bush installed in crank, well, original bush removed, new clutch bush installed, or manual gearbox bush, whatever spigot bush, whatever we want to call it, done. Brand new friction plate, brand new pressure plate installed. Need to take out tool, then measure the installed height, so compare it to there to there, then set up my clutch bearing and fork and everything in there and make sure we're in the ballpark, so I don't get that all the way up into the vehicle and find that there's dramas. Remembering, of course, you don't normally need to do this sort of thing, but because this is a modified thing, it pays to double, triple check what you've done in the past, make sure you got it right. If you didn't, there's a chance to fix it now. Alright, so that's all sorted out. As it turns out, there's a washer that goes in behind. You're not going to be able to see it. There's a stud with a ball on it there. There's a washer that goes in behind that, so I've removed that to give us a little bit better positioning. That's about where we're going to sit right now as the clutch sits, brand spanking new. It's not perfect, but it's in the middle of the window and the gearbox there, so it's probably as best as we're going to get. If anyone was wondering how close the tolerances are, how tight the fit is for this package in the ute, I talked about a body drop plus the engine conversion plus, you know, bell housing swap and all that sort of carry on. Here's the breather tube for the gearbox that has been firmly sandwiched in between body and gearbox. It's literally, I don't know, whatever the clearance is there, nothing. 2 millimeters away from hitting that. So I'll actually, what I'll do is I'll shorten up, or just move the breather, put it over here somewhere. Actually take some of this away too, to give us a little bit more clearance from the body, to make sure that doesn't actually contact with that later on. But yeah, she's a tight fit, definitely a tight fit. You would struggle to get that body any lower with this engine package without a custom sump on there. If you had a VK56 with a better sump, then yeah, the whole front end here could be sat lower than what we've got now. You wouldn't have that issue. You might get the body down a little bit lower than what we've got, but it'll do. Alright, so we had that satisfying clunk as the gearbox slotted into the back of the motor. So that's good, that's done, that's fitted. And when that's torqued up, I'm not sure how much of that you can see, it actually gave us more room at the back there. So that fitting, it nearly clears that pipe. Being an aluminium pipe, it can probably be moved out of the way a little bit, or I'll change that fitting for something else. I haven't bolted down the top manifold yet, so I think that's what I'll do. What have I got? I might be able to put a 90 on the end of a hose or something and get that sorted. A push slot, speed flow bloody hose. So Nissan have made up their mind for me, my mind for me, as far as the water pump situation goes. The water pump will physically bolt onto the motor, that's okay. You can't get a fitting out of the water pump hydraulic pump to run the fan that's on the back of here, because the thermostat housing is different on a DE than what it is on a DD. They're higher up on a DE and they come further forward, and a DD one won't fit on a DE motor because of where this is. So we're kind of running into all those little headaches. If you see this one, it's off to the side here, and it's higher up and it's further forward. That one there is closer to the middle, the actual thermostat, and it's lower down, so that would interfere with where they've got that thing coming out of here. So that's a bit of a headache. We are going to have to go to an electric fan, which I wasn't wanting to do, but that's the way it goes. Unless I get clever with some debauchery. I've figured out if we take this fitting here off the pump, that pump then does fit. We would have to modify this, make it uber low profile somehow, and still get the hose out of here. It starts getting really quite fiddly, difficult, pain in the ass. But it's 3:30 in the Arvo. It's time for another drink. I've just rung our good buddies at Nissan King. They've probably got a parts motor to get a second-hand pump to get me going. I'm going to ring around, see if we can find a new one. And it might be just put a DE pump on there. We'll still need a DE pulley because they're different. And I'll have to get a fan or a couple of fans and make a new shroud. And yeah, even then it's might be tricky for the distance backwards and forwards to get a couple of big fans on there to cool this thing down. Yep, trials and tribulations, but we kind of knew that was coming. Well, I sort of thought it might be. I can get on with putting the, what did you call it, Paul? The bird's nest, when you didn't listen when I said that you can't unplug that, and so it's just tucked away there. Yes, so I can put most of that back on, rejig all that. I can do the fuel system. There's the fuel pressure line. I can get that all sorted out, and I can do the radiator hoses. Yeah, probably can do that. So there's still plenty to do. It won't grind to a halt today. It's not going to start today. It might be close, but probably not. Don't have an oil filter on it for one thing, so I will keep going. Alrighty, so engine, gearbox, drive shaft, exhaust, all mechanically in the vehicle now. Fuel system's actually plumbed up. I need to get rid of that push lock hose that's failing. That needs to go. We'll put some, whatever it is, 200 series or 100 series, whatever those Teflon lines are. Put some of that through to get rid of that. Don't want that failing and burning the whole thing to the ground. Started putting the wiring harness in there. Of course, things are different. Injectors are in a different place. One side of the injector harness is okay. That works. I don't have to change the length. Passenger side, no good. Have to make those a bit longer. The right way to do that would be to get, actually I've got some terminals to go onto the ECU and run new wires all the way through. I've got those terminals actually. I don't have the pins for the injector plugs to run the wires completely as one piece, as you should do. Yeah, there'd be a dodgy way around it, you know. There's only 4 to worry about. Power, 5 wires, power and 4 grounds. So I could put a 6-way Deutsch connector and patch harness basically to extend it. Be a way around it, or just solder it together for now. Replace the wires later on. There's 1 wire on number 2 cylinder, 1 wire on that injector plug that's dodgy. I think it's been broken at some point in time. It's always been given grief, and you had to put a cable tie around it and hold it in just the right spot, and then it'd be fine. But if it moved, it'd start missing when it got hot. So I need to do that wire anyway. Yep, no water pumps in New Zealand, new ones anyway. So second handy from our mates at Nissan King we'll have to do for now. They're not badly priced, brand new, but there's just none here. And I'm going to have to pull that fan shroud off, ditch that big hydraulically powered fan, a couple of whatever's going to fit on there, 14 inches, 2 14s or something like that will go on there, I'm guessing. So that'll be a completely new fan shroud. That bloody aircon line's going to get in the way there, that'll be annoying. And I'm going to pick up a throttle. They're a slightly bigger throttle on these ones than the other ones, than the DD. And I might see about getting the factory air intake hose that charges off over this way, just to make things look a little bit tidier. That's if Nissan King have got one and it's good condition and it's not $9 million. That'll depend on what Nissan charges for that part, I guess. So there you go, Paul. Little less of bird's nest over here, still a little bit. It's just the way it is. Actually, there might be some excess wiring here to get some length on those injectors. I need to look into that. It is a little bit untidy in behind there, but that's fine. That's fine. All right, there you go. So that's what's day 3 done. Maybe it'll be started tomorrow if it's actually going to start. There's nothing horrendously wrong. We'll see. All right, cheers, bye.